Hello, Ivy here. This week's podcast is entitled Charities Receiving Support by Sussex Squad and who are also swarmed by royal supporters with toxicity in their comment sections. Podcast episode 63. Here's an introduction. This podcast looks at two distinct groups who support two groups of people who are polar opposites in terms of a value base. One is focused on undertaking projects with outcome-focused results and including local people impacted by interventions in the planning of each project. The aim is to ensure that they are in a position to have input and to advise what has more chance of success due to environmental factors of various types, as opposed to creating additional damage to the infrastructure of an area or target audience for a future project. The other network relies on traditional support at any activity that they undertake. There is no measurement of output or any real auditing in terms of benefits achieved and value for money. Traditionally, their support base has been there for decades and will continue to support the entity just for being there. It has never been about output, but about doing their duty to turn up for things and smile and wave and give a boost to the organisation, who is grateful for the profile a visit of an hour or so can give to their organisation. In UK media, they refer to such groups as fans or supporters of a particular group or person. In Wikipedia, supporters have a very different description to the one that either of the two groups that we are going to discuss today, and demonstrate how very different the approaches are of each group towards the person or group that they claim to follow. Here is an extract from the Wikipedia entry relating to fans and support groups. Supporters groups, or supporters clubs, are independent fan clubs or campaign groups in sport, mostly association football. Supporters groups in continental Europe are generally known as ultras, which derives from the Latin word ultra, meaning beyond in English, with the implication that their enthusiasm is beyond the normal. In the Anglosphere, these groups are generally known as supporters groups. Most groups in the United States, Canada, United Kingdom and Australia call themselves supporters groups. However, some do self-identify as ultras, particularly in communities with large Spanish, French or Italian-speaking populations. Neither of the two groups that we are discussing today relate to sport, and neither do they look like or have approaches or styles in terms of how they offer support to their sporting hero or heroes. Another extract from a different reference source, all listed below as usual in the article, with focus on participatory culture among fandoms. Fan cultures are examples of participatory cultures. Participatory cultures involve fans acting not only as consumers, but also as producers and creators of some form of creative media. Though most fan cultures, including sports fans and fans of music groups, have elements of participatory culture, media fandom in particular encourages creative expression and artistic productions by its participants. Jenkins et al. In 2009 defines a participatory culture more specifically as one that consists of 1. Relatively low barriers to artistic expression and civic engagement. 2. Strong support for creating and sharing one's creations with others. 3. Some type of informal mentorship in which the most experienced members pass along their knowledge to novices. 4. Members who believe their contributions matter. 5. Members who feel some degree of social connection with one another and care about other members' opinions about their contributions. In fan cultures, these creations and artistic expressions take the form of fan fiction, fan art, fan videos, cosplay, songs, and other interactions with a person, group, or fictional universe. One of the groups that we will be discussing in this podcast does have some similarities with the participatory culture. The group in question describe themselves as royalists, and in particular some of that group are supportive of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. I think it is interesting to remind people that prior to 2016 this was not the case. Media and royal supporters were not full of praise for the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, far from it. They had the least engagements for over a decade beforehand, and whilst their numbers in terms of engagements have increased slightly, they still fall way behind all the other senior royals. Receipts exist for these poor figures, and there is a wealth of receipts for the reporting of this couple prior to 2016, going back many years. I wonder what changed in 2016 for UK media to suddenly love this couple and start to create a new profile for them. What caused the language to change from being critical to one full of praise and declarations of them being hopes for the future? The arrival of Prince Harry's future wife is what happened. The global support network that follows and supports the Duke and Duchess of Sussex is like no other network or support group. Nothing that the UK royal family has ever encountered before. When the Sussexes were forced to move away from the UK for the safety of their family and for their mental health, the support network moved with them in all but physical location. The spotlight, which the royal family had suddenly enjoyed since 2016, but became uncomfortable when the spotlight was not now brighter on the two heirs to the throne. Yes, the international media attention grew overnight following on from the wedding in 2018, and by default, some members of the British royal family actually began to be recognised, but not for positive things. When the Sussexes moved out of the country, so did their support network. So did the international news networks. The majority of the global support network were never royalists. There were a few, like myself, who only took an interest in UK royalty when Princess Diana came onto the scene. After her treatment by the royal family, and then her subsequent death and the surrounding queries about that death to this day, my interest remained with her boys and no one else. In a very short time, my focus was on Prince Harry only, and I was beyond pleased to see him so happy when he announced he and Meghan were serious about each other. The differences between the two support networks could not be more stark, and is the core theme of this podcast. One supports their Duke and Duchess and all of their projects and charities, and also supports similar charities in our respective localities. We are creative in some of the ways outlined in the participatory way described by researchers above, And our creations involve setting up podcasts and audio channels and highlighting and discussing and further amplifying Sussex news and charities. Those sections of the network who wish to include other members of the British royal family into those broadcasts do so. But the focus is their interactions, good or bad, with the Sussexes. The network, who claim to be royal supporters, only utilise royal social media accounts to post toxic things about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Some of those comments are an utter disgrace and bring more shame on the UK. If anything is posted about any other member of the royal family that is not favourable, the comment is removed, or the comment section closed down on that particular topic. All toxic comments about the couple who dared to leave their senior royal duties due to increasing risks to their lives are left to stand. Receipts exist going back to 2016. Supporters who claim that they are royalists don't actively support any member of the royal family or their charities, not even the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, who they claim to support the most. What they have been doing instead is visiting the websites of charities that the Sussexes support and swarming and bombarding the charities with toxic, vile and outright disgusting posts. Very bad indeed. This podcast explores the psychology behind the thought processes of the kind of people that coordinate activity of such vileness and post such gut-wrenching cruelty and nastiness and evil intent on vulnerable people, including children with life-limiting conditions, as if they and their parents do not have enough to contend with already, without these evil ghouls adding to their trauma, simply because the Sussexes support the charities concerned. The same evil souls attacked veteran charities and even did the same with Invictus, which is focused on severely injured veterans, physically or mentally or both. These people are evil beyond words, and they will reap their karma for what they have been putting out each day. I think it is important to state here, and I will repeat it in the conclusion, that both support groups mirror the actions of the people they support. Think about that for a moment. I consider that to be a very important statement to make. I will explain in the conclusions how I arrived at that result and what that says about the tax-funded royals and equally the network that claims to support them, but have nothing to show for any charities that the royals on paper support, but spend all of their time on activity relating to people they hate, not even dislike. They are venomous about the Sussexes, which is no different to the royal family, particularly certain people. One of those royal family members has made his time before he becomes king, if there is still a monarchy in existence at that time, which is doubtful. He has made it his full-time job to try and destroy the Sussexes, and is hand in glove with the media to ensure that the Sussexes fail. UK taxpayer funds is paying for all these hours and weeks and months of trying to bring his brother down. And if in the process something happens to the Duchess and the children, he is deluded to think that Prince Harry will return to the fold and return to all the abuse that was there before, but would now be amplified if he returned as further punishment for leaving in the first place. Hell would freeze over and oceans would part ways before Harry would bring the whole firm to the ground. If you think that destroying Harry's family is going to elevate the royal family into a favourable light, you seriously all need to check yourselves and book your place now in a long-term clinic for assistance. The landscape of this podcast. This podcast explores the phenomenon of groups of strangers coming together in online groups and their rise through the ranks as outlined in the examples I have given over these past 12 months, which organisations such as the FBI use to track known groups around the world and their activities in targeting an individual with hate, and track their rise through the stages, each with increasing risk to the target. The online posting on social media platforms continue and appear to help the group feel that they are on the right track. It is coordinated and records exist by Bot Sentinel, the organisation tracking this activity. Law enforcement has been approached about some of the more extreme and dangerous individuals targeting others on and off the platforms. As they move forward in the academic models, whether or not they know about or recognise their staged journey, they are moving into dangerous grounds, both for the target and for themselves as individuals. All sections in this podcast may appear abstract at first, but trust me, you will see how they all come together and point to the structure and the power and the finance behind it all. The psychology of groups. An extract from podcast episode number 36, which was aired in February of this year. We have previously discussed in SGUK podcast to date dysfunctional family dynamics, group dynamics, in particular the levels of control and how hatred and discriminatory behaviour patterns begin to emerge, and how there is a wealth of academic research into how the hatred grows, and the levels in the structure dictate the application of that professed hatred. We explored how those that progress through the ranks of their group structure emerges as a validation of their worth in their own eyes, and feel that there is a level of camaraderie and friendship that does not exist outside of that bubble. There is a general feeling that anyone outside of the group is a threat in some way, and the delusion grows into dangerous proportions with time and progression through the group. We also looked at how narcissists function in such a structure, and the mixing of the various behaviours at play form a very toxic ticking time bomb. We looked at a number of academic models and their application out in the working environment. Examples were given of how, for example, the FBI use a range of tools which help to identify patterns and growth in certain groups' behaviour that have remained on their radar as a result. All in all, the top-tier societal groups feel confident to continue with their activity because people who are doing most of the day-to-day rollout of this hunter and prey activity are people that none of the top societal groups care about, and are more than happy to watch the working class and a few who think they come from better stock to lead the way in these social media groups that have formed over the last 5 years, and will sit back and declare that they have nothing to do with this activity, if the day ever comes where it looks like that they do. The social media platforms have no incentive to take any action against hate-inciting accounts. The pull of the huge income generation overrides any form of moral code. It will require a change in the law, with heavy penalties before even a small amount of monitoring takes place. As we've spoken before on this channel, the emergence of Chris Boozy, the CEO of Bot Sentinel, has proved it can be done. Bot Sentinel have done more in a few months than any of the large social media platforms over the last 5 years. To date, only Getter, a small social media platform, in comparison to the giants pulling in the millions on the back of hate activity, has stepped up to the plate. I am encouraged to see and hear Prince Harry refer to the work of Bot Sentinel last year in a forum of technical experts on the issues and implications and dangers of the current growth of cyberbullying taking place globally now. It is encouraging to know that Bot Sentinel's work is being discussed in those types of forums, and we can only hope that Chris Boozy is invited to join that forum in the near future, because what has been achieved in months by Chris and his team proves what can be done and must be causing some discomfort with the shareholders of the current social media platforms, because deep down they know things will have to change. Well done to Chris and his team. I will put links to Bot Sentinel's various reports in the reference sources below. People respond negatively when their need to belong is unfulfilled. For example, college students often feel homesick and lonely when they first start college, but not if they belong to a cohesive, socially satisfying group. People who are accepted members of a group tend to feel happier and more satisfied, but should they be rejected by a group, they feel unhappy, helpless, and depressed. Studies of ostracism, the deliberate exclusion from groups, indicate this experience is highly stressful and can lead to depression, confused thinking, and even aggression. By the way, when I'm quoting these things, all of the researchers and the dates of their research papers are listed in the text and also in the reference sources. When researchers used a functional magnetic resonance imaging scanner to track neural responses to exclusion, they found that people who were left out of a group activity displayed heightened cortical activity in 2 specific areas of the brain: the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula. These areas of the brain are associated with the experience of physical pain. It hurts, quite literally, to be left out of a group. Affiliation in groups not only satisfy the need to belong, they also provide members with information, assistance, and social support. Leon Festinger's theory of social comparison in 1950 to 1954 suggested that in many cases people join with others to evaluate the accuracy of their personal beliefs and attitudes. Stanley Schachter in 1959 explored this process by putting individuals in ambiguous, stressful situations and asking them if they wished to wait alone or with others. He found that people affiliate in such situations. They seek the company of others. Why do people join hate groups? Those who study human behaviour attribute hate speech more to deep personality issues than to a diagnosable mental illness. But they are also intrigued by how the white supremacy movement is rebranding itself for the 21st century. The well-known racist symbols of white robes and hoods, or shaved heads and torches, have given way to a clean-cut subtlety for the millennial generation, With heightened tensions on all sides, there's a renewed interest in explaining how minds turn towards hate. I felt power where I felt powerless. I felt a sense of belonging where I felt invisible, says McClear, aged 49, said of the pull of white nationalism that led him to spend 15 years as a skinhead recruiter and an organiser for the White Aryan Resistance. I was beaten at an all-boys Catholic school on a regular basis at 10 or 11, said McClear, a middle-class kid from Canada, which left him with an unhealthy sense of identity. King, aged 42, who grew up in rural South Florida, said she turned to white nationalism as a child, first learning racial slurs from her parents. Growing up, she questioned her sexual identity and didn't fit in. At 12, she said, a school bully ripped her shirt open, exposing her training bra and humiliating her in front of her classmates. At that point, I decided if I became the bully, no one could do that to me, King said. She became a neo-Nazi skinhead at 15 and at 23 went to prison for 3 years for a hate crime. King had a tattoo of a swastika on her right hand. She has since covered it up with the likeness of a cat. Young people with a troubled past are especially vulnerable, said psychologist Irvin Staub from Massachusetts, a professor emeritus at the University of Massachusetts, who studies social processes that lead to violence. Why would people join groups like that? It usually involves them finding no other socially acceptable and meaningful ways to fulfill important needs. The need for identity, the need for a feeling of effectiveness, the need for a feeling of connection. Staub said, often these are people who don't feel like they've succeeded or had a chance to succeed across normal channels of success in society. They come from families that are problematic or families where they're exposed to this kind of extreme view of white superiority and nationalism. If you don't feel you have much influence and power in the world, you get a sense of power from being part of a community, and especially a rather militant community. In a 2015 report from the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism, known as START, found that former members of violent white supremacist groups showed almost half, 45%, reporting being the victim of childhood physical abuse, and about 20% reporting being the victim of childhood sexual abuse. The study by sociologist Peter Simi of Chapman University in California suggests that influences on these followers may be related more to the group's social bonds than ideology. Simi, an expert on violence and extremist groups, who has interviewed hundreds of former believers, co-wrote American Swastika Inside the White Power Movement's Hidden Spaces of Hate, with sociologist Robert Futrell of the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. Now that these groups are courting millennials, they've taken to changing their image, Futrell said. It's an attempt to distance from the past when the picture in all our minds of a white supremacist was the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, with a hood and a cape, or a neo-Nazi with a shaved head and tattoos. That's gone by the wayside over the last decade, he said. Groups advocating white superiority have always preyed on young, impressionable people who are loners or had a traumatic thing in their background. What's different now is the range of ways the white power movement is reaching them. The internet is a boon to those who are stigmatized and relatively powerless. The alternate right has gained power online, as its proponents use Twitter, YouTube and other social media platforms to spread their message. A study last year from George Washington University found that white nationalists are heavy users of Twitter. Forensic psychologist Lawrence Miller said there is a misunderstanding about the motivation of those who join fringe groups, that they have an ideology and search for a group, when really it is the other way around. People will pick a belief system that best matches their personalities and their identities, he said. What would compel some people to join a hate group, hating someone you don't know, and chances are you will never meet? On another social media platform, the question was asked, why would someone hate a person they do not know, and who they will never meet? The answers may surprise you. I was certainly one of those people who has been asking that same question for the last 6 years. Listen to these answers. What difference does having met a person make? I don't need to have to meet Donald Trump to extrapolate from the things he says and does that he's a person whom I should hate and whose goals I should combat if I stand for everything for which I do stand, because he's against those things to the material detriment of people he's never met. He hates them easily enough, and he doesn't have to say it for it to be true. What kind of person would I be if a handshake and dinner was enough to buy away my hatred? Indeed, many people on this planet and their actions are genuinely hateable, and if I was required to meet them all personally before hating them, I probably couldn't do it, and then where would we be? I'm sure I don't need to ask you if you're the type of person who has opinions on things for which you lack either knowledge or experience, do I? I'm sure there are people who hate me due entirely to their experience reading my terrible writing. And if those people ever were to meet me, my natural charisma would literally eat that hatred and make me stronger with it. Racial hatred necessitates distance, either intellectual or physical. Otherwise, all the humanity gets in the way. Another response. How can we hate another person who we have never met, whether it is in real life or just a line on a TV commercial? The human mind is continually being conditioned. It depends what our minds are being subjected to as to how our opinions eventually ensue. If 3 friends who you highly respect come to you and start talking really bad about a 4th person, and they all have something very nasty to say about this person, then you are naturally going to dislike them too, maybe to the point of hating them, like your friends do. Same goes for when you see and listen to comments on TV and adverts. What are adverts, after all? Just a form of brainwashing. Hate is a word often used out of context, but when our minds are constantly subjected to information that such a person is really bad, annoying, maybe even evil, then it is possible to believe that you really hate them. Those 2 examples confirms previous podcasts relating to the power of propaganda. And in this podcast, the power of a mediocre set of people who pretend to be professional journalists, but who instead feel comfortable to write the things that they do. And if you use the earlier analogy that it is easy to hate someone if you believe that the way they conduct themselves or what they propose to do will impact your way of life in some way, then you will hate too. In the case of royal reporters, their gravy train as a royal correspondent was potentially going to change. 2 of the royal family members wrote their own speeches. The same 2 did not brief royal reporters beforehand about their plans. The plan was to remove Meghan in some way, and then the old Harry would be there to keep the royal wheels oiled and turning until the royal family would cast him aside, like they did with all spares once their usefulness was fulfilled. The Cambridge children would be adults and who would be taking up adult duties. When Harry left too, that major plan that the royal family and its media cooked up ended up turning to burnt morsels and fit for nothing but the trash. Now their way of life in the cosy royal friendship circle was about to become very uncertain, because the main moneymaker for the royal reporters was the abuse of the Sussexes. And now their plan had backfired, because they walked away and were now free to do what they wanted and did not have to work with royal reporters ever again. Some would say that was karma in action. Patterns of behaviour when you hate someone you are unlikely to meet. This is perhaps due to the in-group, out-group theory, according to behavioural researcher Patrick Wayness. In social psychology, the social group which you can psychologically relate with and identify yourself as being a member of is an in-group. Contrarily, the social group with which you can't personally identify is an out-group. So when you feel that there is a threat from certain outsiders, you will seek the support of your in-group. Hence, hatred is a survival mechanism as per the psychology of hate. Considerable evidence suggests that dividing the world into us and them is deeply hardwired in our brains, with an ancient evolutionary legacy, writes Robert Sapolsky. He adds, humans universally make us and them dichotomies along lines of race, ethnicity, gender, language group, religion, age, socio-economic status, and so on. And it's not a pretty picture. Hatred is driven by two key emotions of love and aggression. One, love for the in-group, the group that is favoured. Two, aggression for the out-group, the group that has been deemed as being different, dangerous, and a threat to the in-group. The target of the majority of the ire is Meghan, and not so much Harry, not least because he is considered true blue blood, and the hope is that he will return to help his brother William. The royal reporters dehumanised Meghan quite early on, so anything they do now, they do not see it as hurting a human being. Meghan is seen as a commodity to them and puts money on their tables. And now Sussexes have moved away, and on a longer tax funded by UK taxpayers, they have no qualms at all about the degrees to which they are prepared to go to stop Meghan and Harry's continual rise to even more success. Everything that they have done to this couple, mainly Meghan, has been with the full intent to destroy Meghan completely, and a certainty in their minds that Harry would return to the fold a broken man and would seek solace from the family, who contain all the people, particularly the next two heirs to the throne, who are responsible for the sanctioning of the abuse conducted for over 6 years towards Meghan. Zero concern whether or not Meghan lived or died, and how they can even consider for a second that Harry would return home if a tragedy occurred to Meghan. Delusion and deranged covers their description, much like the people who claim to be their supporters. The British royal family have never had a female join the family with a successful career under her belt and millions in the bank, combined with being an ambassador for organisations including the UN. Over a decade of experience of developing projects and raising funds for various groups. All too much for the performative royals, and it is clear as day that the activity that has taken place over the years has been coordinated from people of power and resources, and who can hide behind thousands of people to do their bidding, without them being aware who is behind whatever pyramid group structure they have joined. They receive psychological positive strokes from being part of these various networks, and many make money from it. So that is an added bonus. And only discerning people cottoned on to what is happening, and the use of bot farms for posting. The coordination and the speed of simultaneous posts on social media platforms take less than a minute for them to appear. Some of those individuals have admitted in print that they are paid for their posts that they make. All negative against Meghan. The next section, and in the article, which again is more detailed, gives you examples of 3 of the models that we have seen before, hate models that is, and how the escalation through them can occur. So in this section that is headed, the possible rationale of why some groups are swarming to charity websites to post toxic, hate-fueled comments will be shown under this heading. I'm not going to read through all of that again, not least I've gone through it a few times recently as well as last year, but I will go through the stages and quote a sentence or two that applies to the current groups that we're talking about and how they feature on one of the models. Stage 1. The haters gather. Not all insecure people are haters, but all haters are insecure people. And it includes online groups, keyboard warriors, daily writing race and hate inciting posts on various social platforms without challenge. Over the last 4 years or so, the numbers have grown, or rather, it is clear that many individuals set up multiple accounts and post hateful things to give the impression that the number of people out there is high. The numbers are becoming dangerous because of the ripple effect of their social media content. A drip feed of race baiting. Stage 2. The hate group defines itself. Groups formed and were proudly declaring their views on the betrayal of their royal family, all setting up social media accounts on many platforms, proudly announcing that they would defend this British way of life. The fact that Meghan was an American and an actress and a feminist and extremely wealthy, and the largest red flag for the majority was that she was a person of colour. Every heading represented factors that royalists could not tolerate, and the race element just sent racists over the edge, that a person of colour was occupying space that was deemed for Caucasian people only. The fact that Meghan was wealthy in her own right and was therefore not impressed by opulence and quality homes because she could afford and did buy those things for herself over the years. No other royal bride had come into the firm with that level of wealth and intellect and strong feminist views. It was a bright red flag, and the race element was the final nail. Stage 3. The hate group disparages the target. Hate is the glue that binds the haters to each other and to a common cause. By verbally debasing the object of their hate, haters enhance their self-esteem as well as their group status. After verbal denigration, haters progress to the more acrimonious stage. Stage 4. Hate group taunts the target. On average, 100 articles a day are written about Harry and Meghan, none of it positive. The comment sections of these newspapers are full of hate, based on this daily feeding of the beast of hate. People have taken their own lives as a result of the UK tabloid press, and we should never forget the UK media's the part that they played in the abuse of Princess Diana and her eventual death in 1997. The same thing is happening again with Meghan. Stage 5. The hate group attacks the target with weapons. This stage is critical. It differentiates the vocally abusive to physically aggressive and includes the phrase prowling the turf, and I'll come back to that phrase in a moment. Adrenaline increases, leads to provoking anger, Thoughts and actions leads to increased adrenaline. Anger builds on anger. Stage 6. The hate group utilises weapons. No reasons to give details here, we all know what that means. Stage 7. The hate group destroys the target. The ultimate goal is to destroy the object of their hate. If they cannot get to their target, the aim is to hurt the target by hurting someone or something that the target likes and supports. An easy target then, in respect of the Sussexes, are the charities that they support. That's my opinion, and I link that with prowling the turf. So because they can't get to Harry and Meghan, whether they're in the UK or not, what they're doing is going online and targeting charities that the Sussexes support, whichever country those charities happen to be based in. And they do it that way. They are trying to hurt the business model of the Sussexes to deter people working with them in the future, and for charities to not be able to risk having that kind of bombardment again. That's how I see that. I think that is the way that they are applying stage 7. They are destroying the target, they think, by targeting people or organisations, charities that the Sussexes support. I think that's a new kind of low. That has been going on now for a few months, and there is complete silence by the royal family. And like I said, the behaviour of people in an organisation, in a structure, however you want to call it, mirror the people above them till it goes right to the top. So just like how they remained silent on all the abuse that has been thrown at Meghan in particular for the last 6 years, but they were quick to come out with a statement within hours for both of the Cambridges over things neither which were life-threatening. They weren't even untrue, but that's another argument again. So we had things like, denying the use of hair extensions. I mean, really, in the world today, that is something that the royal family were concerned about and felt the need to put out an official statement. Here you are with people sending poisonous powders through the post, physically trying to get in positions where they can cause harm. All range of things that I don't need to go into here, and the receipts exist for all of them. So people who are living in denial can continue, but people that have got sense know. And now this is their latest, targeting charities. And if the establishment of the UK, which includes the royals at the top of it, but if all of the groups who are supporting one another and making sure you all stay where you are, if you think that the world is going to just sit back and admire you for what is going on here, they will be blaming, and rightly so, the people at the top of the chain who remained silent while this is going on. It's an absolute disgrace, and you're about to find out, before this podcast finishes, the number of international bodies that are looking and will be looking hopefully in more detail in the coming months and years. Truth be known, harmony or a peace flag being waved at the Sussexes is not an ambition of the social media platforms, because inciting hatred and spending every living moment concerning themselves with what Harry and Meghan do day to day, and then discussing it on their platforms, is income generating. I doubt they spend 1% of their time actually supporting their so-called faves in the royal family. They just post on royal platforms about their thoughts on the Sussexes, not on the royal family whose platform they're on. And they do it because they know that the British royal family will not remove those comments. They don't remove toxic comments about the Sussexes, but they always remove comments that are less than adoring about members of the royal family. It is quite stark, and any international person that visits websites of the royal family are definitely going to approach royal family websites first, and I think over the last 6 years they have a good impression of what's going on. And I've certainly read more than a few comments now over those years on social media platforms that said they fully intended to either visit the UK again or visit for the first time. And because of the treatment of Meghan in particular, and things that are left on all royal family social media platforms, they've decided that they will spend their money in any other nation but the UK. So the isolationist approach that the current people in power are pursuing, you're doing well. It's working. You are going to be isolated, so you all have fun. That methodology, as I said, of prowling the turf, but not physically, but in a given area, they prowl the Sussex charitable websites. People visiting those sites who are trying to donate, or also to seek help and guidance for their family member or friend. And to be confronted with such disgusting rhetoric, it is a stain on the British royal family and no one else. There are very few human beings that would target a charity simply because its patron is someone or a couple that the haters are against for whatever reason. One recent charity was one centred on providing support for children and their families where the child has a life-limiting condition. I can't put into print or say in a podcast the description of people who would do that simply because they do not like one or both of the Sussexes. It takes a real piece of, and you put your own words in there, to target any charity, but a charity dealing with such trauma and then having to deal with flawed and evil human beings posting toxic, bilious content on their website is a whole new low to sink and dwell in. The only difference between groups and dysfunctional families is that the latter flitter about on any of the levels on the hate models that take their fancy on any given day. Their thought process follows no structure or rationale other than being seen to win at several things, and for these wins to be publicised. Rarely an independent thought or any new idea accompanies these activities. At the heart of the matter is the destruction of a member of the family who is considered to be more popular than the senior members of that family, and or is clearly intellectually superior than someone or people with a higher rank in terms of title. Final conclusions. As you have probably gathered by now, I am highlighting the treatment of Harry and Meghan at the heart of this topic. They are a high enough profile couple to help shed light on what is happening around the world in too many places. And in terms of the UK, this isolationist approach the UK is adopting in recent years and plans to move further on that front leaves its citizens even further away from justice and equal treatment under the law. The UK is embarking on an approach that it condemns certain other countries of adopting similar tactics and laws and protesting their disdain. In reality, the UK approach is only meant to be acceptable in certain spaces, but those considered outsiders here in the UK or elsewhere should not have the same access and use of the law as the UK government. The use of the experience of Meghan and Harry can be used as a very useful contribution to research. When we have institutions, national institutions in the UK, as one example, using terminology that is deemed offensive in terms of people of colour, and now has sunk so low to include descriptions of children who are not pure white, then as a nation, we really are swimming in the toxic waste. As a result, when other groups do the same, then the general population who harbour such views of people of colour feel comfortable to air those views, and in most cases it goes without any real challenge. All the societal groups that I've mentioned before, government, monarchy, aristocracy, UK media, including royal reporters, police and royal family, all of them are slow to react to hate speech or incitement of hateful behaviour, often because they use the same words or take part in some of the activity. And it's deemed acceptable, as they know the other pillars at the top of the UK will not challenge it. All scratch the back of each other. Now, Meghan and Harry have left the UK and are still standing and doing very well indeed. The same cannot be said for the royal family or the UK. Resentment is a complex, multi-layered emotion that has been described as a mixture of disappointment, disgust, anger and fear. Inherent in resentment is a perception of unfairness. It has become known for anger, spite and holding a grudge. Resentment can also develop and be maintained by focusing on past grievances continuously or by trying to justify the emotions. Resentment can occur as a result of the grief process and can be sustained by ruminating over it. Anger is about the immediate situation, whereas resentment is a defensive way to mentally punish or, in the more extreme case, to devalue. The level of hatred created towards the Sussexes, and Meghan in particular, falls at the UK royal family's door. That is known the world over now, so it's going to take more than visits to places, whether British royal family members travel by private jet or a private floating hotel. It is all taxpayer funded and it is not royal core business. Simply a vanity project, so records somewhere in a dusty book on a shelf in the USA states that Prince Harry's brother visited here once. So, to repeat, visiting places where you feel safe to talk about things that are not priority for those countries, and places where you were not invited in the first place, needs a rethink. My final thoughts on this topic for now. Princess Diana still speaks from her grave now, 25 years later. The UK establishment really does not want to wish for one or more of the Sussexes to join her, because there is no way on this planet that a UK monarchy will survive the destruction of anyone else. Not even a day, and within a year the institution would be a memory. There is no doubt about that at all. The international community is aware of the process being used these last few years, and someone in that family thought it a good idea to try and bring down a black woman who was only doing good. You could not find dirt on her, so then you tried to destroy her character with hate-filled rhetoric in the media. And at the same time, you all tried to destroy her mental health. The royal social media platforms are a disgrace, even for right-leaning Great Britain. Your silence whilst your fans do disgusting things on charity websites are yet another stain on the UK, and makes you all complicit by your silence. But the speed in which you come to your white relatives over any criticism provides the best receipts yet. Every harm inflicted on Meghan has been inflicted on people of colour around the world, and those same people will be in the forefront of ensuring that the monarchy system is brought to heel about its human rights breaches over decades, never mind centuries. There are more than enough that have been committed in the last decade to raise eyebrows. It will come to light in due course. Speaking of human rights, a group of us have been preparing a pack of information which will be sent out next week to a variety of international legal entities and a wide range of individuals in a number of countries. The campaign centres on a range of human rights breaches around the world, including the treatment of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, particularly Meghan, treatment of an American citizen on UK soil for 3 years, and the continued abuse and harassment, to name but 2 of many areas of human rights breaches, continuing on USA soil of a USA family by people based mainly in the UK. Each of the organisations and specialists and politicians and legal advocates and practices around the world, and all cover areas of interest and topics of the injustices pointed out by the Sussexes on their website and in documentaries. Every SGUK podcast is linked to these areas of concern. Make a note that the groundwork for this campaign has been going on for 10 months and has a group of volunteers from the squad, mainly from the SGUK podcast channel. This is the second round of large-scale information about to be sent out, and a number of news networks based in a number of countries will receive their own information pack at the end of this month, September 2022. The volunteer group will remain anonymous due to the track record of so-called royal supporters and or the royal reporters targeting said volunteers in the past. I have made sure that their safety is paramount, and all the organisations and people in our target groups are aware of the reasons why. As a result, it will be a group of high-profile organisations which will be spokespeople for this campaign moving forward in the future. That's all I'm going to say on that score for the time being. I have missed out several sections in the article because I've just gone over the hour and I'm trying to keep it around an hour now moving forward. So be assured there is lots more under each of those headings that I haven't referred to today, but there is a list of reference sources as per usual. So hopefully you have found this podcast informative as well as being entertaining. And as you know the topics that will be coming up in the following 3 weeks, and albeit I will be in a different country, I will still be liaising with you all in the same way, probably not as frequent each day, but I will be responding, putting comments through, doing the moderation, the usual, because of the nonsense that comes through most weeks. So I'll still be responding and putting things through, and I will at some stage, probably late at night, most evenings, that I will respond to comments and actually sort of say something back. But hopefully you found it informative, as I said, and entertaining, and the article contains much, much more, together with images, as per usual, and also site links to more images so that I don't have to put them all in the into the article itself. There'll be a few on screen, hopefully, as you are listening to this and watching this if it's on YouTube, but there'll be more in the article and definitely more links for you to find more information. So, speak to you in the comments on Sunday night. Article will be out on Monday, and I will be able to do some things on Monday. Tuesday I will be flying, so definitely I'll be in the air and won't be able to do very much. But I will respond late on Tuesday night and every day after that, but mainly late at night. So, speak to you soon. Bye from me. Bye from Ivy. Bye.